My name is Connie Nshemereirwe. I'm the host of the podcast A is Not for Apple. And we have a special edition this time where we are at the annual general meeting of the Global Young Academy. And I have a guest with me. Why don't you tell us what your name is, what country you're from, and what your scientific field is?
Okay, so my name is Abel. I work at Dublin City University in Ireland, but I'm also at the moment a guest professor at the University of Tsukuba in Japan. And I work in social science and economics. But I mean, as a member of Young Academy, as a former member of Young Academy, you cannot limit yourself to a discipline. I think we have in common the fact that we use a scientific method and we believe in science. So the question about discipline...
What your scientific field is a bit odd.
Yeah, it's a bit, it's understandable.
Yes.
So for people to classify you, but I also think we should think of science as kind of this big
broader
community where we are all kind of on one boat.
Yes. Anyway, thinking about the same issues from maybe different sides, and you can always take a different view on it.
Yeah.
In this podcast, in any case, we look at how we can reflect on the state of our education systems, whether in Africa, whether in Ireland. But I think there's a way you can also think about education globally with an eye to how we can better prepare this generation or the next generation for an uncertain future. What sort of skills do they need? What kind of mindsets do they need? I don't know if you can reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah, as we were talking before, the main challenge is to find a common framework that could kind of encompass all possible cases. Because what I see now in global education is that in some places education is a privilege. In other places is a kind of right, and is a very, very well consolidated right. And this affects the way education is delivered and also the way education is perceived and received. So in places where education is a privilege, they have one case where students will just be happy to get anything as long as they get the education, as a kind of one extreme case. On the other hand, when the education is a right, it's kind of something which is very, very well asserted. That's probably more universal, but at the same time, people start getting it, taking it for granted. And then it's more like, I've seen cases where the teacher is bringing the student out of the comfort zone, which is, in my view, as a social, coming from social science, is something we have to do. Because only if you feel uncomfortable, you kind of start learning.
Yeah.
And then they kind of being reported, or they've been kind of complaints, or why this teacher is making me feel uncomfortable. And this is something that I never faced in places where education is more of a privilege. So I work in Ireland, but I also teach in Europe, and I teach in Africa, I teach in Asia, and I can see this is a very big gap.
Right. Well, that's very interesting, because indeed, when people begin to take education as a right or as a product almost, you mentioned it's almost something they consume, then it's not something that they really engage with. What do you think is happening in these classes? What are they really doing? Are they passing the time? Are they just there to talk to their neighbor? What's happening in those classes where people are not really engaging with what they're receiving? They're not being stretched by it. Then what's happening?
Think about the case where education is paying, either from the state or from the student. So we have the case in Ireland. In Ireland, the students have to pay. We get half of the money for every student from the government. So for the university, a student is a source of income, because if you want more money, you just take more students. Which means if you take more students, you need to graduate more students. Now think about the UK, where education was the cost of education went even higher. We're talking of 9,000, 10,000 a year. For them, a student is a source of income. When this happens, if the student isn't happy, and the students say, "No, I'm going to go to another university," that's a loss for the university. This brings kind of commodification of education, where the students want an education, and the university wants to keep the student. So they're making things easier, because they know that if the students find things hard, they might go to another university and get things easier. It's a bit what happens with the tax evasion or tax avoidance in most of the world. If you are taxing your companies too much, the company will go elsewhere. So it's in your interest to make things easier for that one.
Yeah.
And this affects also the way students become, once students become aware of this situation, they also become aware of their power. And some of them are fine. I mean, we are talking of, as a scientist, we talk almost of a group. So out of 100%, let's say there are some people that still genuinely want to study and they only care about this. But this opens to abuse of the system from the student side, saying, no, I don't like this kind of discipline. Why are we keeping this one? Oh, I don't like this teacher. I don't like the method they are doing.
Using.
And in some cases, feedback is important. But again, how much is too much? If you're feeling uncomfortable today because I'm giving you a task which is hard, and I know this for you, I've been doing this for like 20 years, and I know that next week you will understand where we're going, but you don't understand it today, and you have the power to say, I don't like it, I'm not going to do it, then the teacher fails in his mission. And then you just have to deliver pre-packaged, pre-prepared instructions about how to do things, which is, in a way, is kind of diminishing the role of education, is undermining the role of education.
Yeah. So then how will this generation participate in solving problems or in responding to these global complex challenges if they were never in a hard situation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they're exposed to these challenges or complex situations, they are not really prepared.
Well, I see the word. I see imagine a student population of 100. We can work in percentiles. Yeah. So we have 100. Out of those hundreds, every generation always have the people that are brilliant, and they do not rely only on the teacher. So those people are the ones that exchange with the teacher. The teacher is very proud of them, but they also study at home. They have their interests. Maybe they have a garage and they're learning by themselves how to repair a car. And they go to the teacher and say, well, teacher, I've been doing this. And the teacher's like, wow, this is a very good student. Imagine this is the top like 10%, 15%.
Okay.
Then you have the people that are they struggle a lot on the other side of the spectrum. And then you have the mid-range. The ones that are good, they could be motivated and they could learn more. And this is what changes the society, because the ones that are in the 10%, they will stay as the elite of the society. The question is, okay, beyond those elites, do we have any recharge of the elites? If somebody from the elites steps out, dies, moves to another country, we have to take it from the pool of the second choice. And from the, I don't want the classes, but middle, the one that are not top, but they're still good.
Yeah.
And this is where the teacher can do a lot, because the teacher can motivate the ones that are not repairing the car at home, that are not interested in doing things, by giving books to read and giving exercises. And if those people have the power to say, no, we don't want to do this, and if some of them abuse this power, then what happens is that those people will remain average, which is also fine. We're not going to die anyway, and there are lots of people anyway in the world. But the question is, the quality of the government, the quality of institutions will depend also on those ones. So even if you have the elites that are usually very well trained, the question is what happens with whom those elites are going to work. And this is where education is important, because it gives people more kind of critical views on things and a capacity to be more autonomous, which is something that we are at risk of losing if we commodify education the way we're doing in some countries.
You've taught in different areas. You've taught in Asia, you say in Africa, and you see that there people still think of education as more of a privilege. And I wonder if, at the same time though, in many of those places, the education itself, the quality is not very high. So what's the future of these people? Do you still think they could still find a way to become more skilled, more educated, perhaps given the abundance of information and on the internet? Or
yeah, the thing is, education is very high. I find it a very general statement. So it could be the technical education, some of the newest methods, not. But education to me consists also of a set of values that are transmitted by the teacher. And there could be human values, there could be emotional values. In this case, this is still high. What might be the gap is not about this, because actually I think in Europe we are losing this. We are losing the the human connection with the students. Whereas in places like Africa or Asia, not to generalize too much, but you still have it. And what you might be missing is technical knowledge. And the question is, to what extent this technical knowledge can be integrated into the emotional knowledge, into the human knowledge, to create individuals that are ready for the future.
Yeah.
So I think we should value more what we have here in Africa and what we have in Asia, and not forget those things, because the risk is that you try to copy the European model,
Yeah.
and then we go to this kind of aseptical, impersonal education that might create people that are perfect to manage a problem. But then the question is, when the problem is complex, because a complex world creates complex problem, how people can cope with a sequence of problems that you have to hierarchize, you have to solve those things. And this is something that is not about technical education. So if you want to boost education in places where they consider lower level, I think that, think about the problems every Ugandan needs to solve every day. From when it goes from the house, those are problems that in other parts of the world you don't think about. So Ugandans are very smart in this. What they might need is to direct this kind of intelligence into technical knowledge that can also benefit technological innovation or kind of policies or the society. This is the thing. So I think we should not lose the focus. We should not depreciate what we have here, but we should integrate it with, bring more teachers. Have more exchanges. But don't think that people are coming from outside, they are the gods, and they are going to teach how to live. Because you know very well how to live. You know much better how to live in here. It's just that you don't have the technical, the doctor might not know the latest kind of machine that is there. But this is just a technical thing.
I agree, Abel, actually, and I really appreciate that insight, because you're right. I once had a friend who told me that when he was in Uganda, every day he had to solve problems. And then he went on to live in Copenhagen for a while, and then he had to solve no problem. Everything was so smooth, everything was already solved. So I really appreciate that we have a lot of informal skilling, education, values that are inculcated just from the way that we live daily and have to navigate our own world.
Yeah.
So that's really great. Thank you so much, Abel. And I really appreciate you coming on this podcast of mine.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
We'll see you again.